You're listening to the N2K Space Network.
And now a word from our sponsor, SpyCloud, the leader in operationalizing cybercrime analytics. Traditional threat intelligence is a thing of the past. Cyber criminals are stealing vast amounts of credentials, session cookies, and financial data every day, and it's hard to keep up. SpyCloud is the trusted partner businesses turn to fully understand their darknet exposure risk and neutralize threats before it's too late. SpyCloud alerts your organization as soon as an employee or customer's data appears on the darknet, so you can act faster than bad actors to prevent cyber attacks like ransomware, session hijacking, account takeover, and online fraud. With insights from the industry's largest repository of recaptured data, protect the digital identities and systems most important to your business. Get your free corporate darknet exposure report at spycloud.com/cyberwire and see what information criminals have in their hands today. That's spycloud.com/cyberwire.
Apollo 14 launched on January 31st, 1971. 5 days later, Ellen Shepard and Edgar Mitchell walked on the moon, while Stuart Roosa, a former U.S. Forest Service smoke jumper, orbited above in the command module. Packed in small containers in Roosa's personal kit were hundreds of tree seeds, part of a joint NASA-USFS project. Upon return to Earth, the seeds were germinated by the Forest Service. Known as the moon trees, the resulting seedlings were planted throughout the United States and the world. But no one kept track of where they went. So, what happened to all the moon trees? Welcome to T-Minus Deep Space from N2K Networks. I'm Maria Varmazes. An email in 1996 alerted Dave Williams of the NASA Space Science Data Coordinated Archive Team about the Moon Tree Project. And since then, Dave has made it his pet project to find out what happened to the moon trees.
My name's Dave Williams. I'm the planetary scientist in charge of the NASA Space Science Data Coordinated Archive, which is NASA's deep archive for spacecraft data. I've been at NASA for over 30 years now, and I have gotten involved in this moon trees thing sort of as a sidelight, really not part of my regular job. Normally, I'm restoring old spacecraft data from old missions, the Apollo missions, Pioneer Venus, things like that, and archiving the data and making it available to scientists.
That's really cool. I kind of regret that I'm not asking you more about your actual job as opposed to your side project.
Yeah, I just fell into it completely. I mean, I got my degree in geophysics, and that's what I was going to do, and I'm still doing it, but now it's definitely part of the archiving stuff.
Well, Dave, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. And let's start with, first, I think many of our listeners will know vaguely what the moon trees are, but can we just start with the real basics for anyone who may not know what we mean? What are the moon trees?
Absolutely, Maria. So back in 1971, Apollo 14 flew to the moon. It was the third mission that made it to the moon. It was right after Apollo 13, which of course was the mission that failed, and luckily everyone made it back. So all eyes were kind of on Apollo 14. But one of the astronauts, the command module pilot, who was the one who did not go down to the moon, Stuart Roosa, had worked for the Forest Service previously to joining NASA. And as part of that, he decided, along with some of his colleagues at the Forest Service, that he was going to bring tree seeds up with him to orbit the moon. And so he put them in his personal kit. He took about 500 tree seeds that were selected by the Forest Service, took them up inside his personal kit, brought them around the moon, brought them back to Earth, gave them back to the Forest Service. They germinated the trees, and then they sent them all over the country in 1976 for the bicentennial, and they planted them just all over the country. And then it sort of got kind of forgotten. And so, when I first heard about it, I'd never heard about moon trees myself, and it was kind of a fascinating thing. But that is the basic thing. Yes, there are these trees now planted all over the country that flew to the moon in 1971 and are still growing out there.
But we don't know where all of them are, which is kind of which is an interesting mystery to be solving.
It's very interesting. It's been fascinating all these years. I assumed that they took the seeds up, they took careful records of where they were planted and everything like that, and it didn't work that way. It didn't work that way for a few reasons. One, it was really a public relations thing. It wasn't really a science experiment. It was definitely a public relations kind of thing. Two, it was basically there were three different entities involved, and it got very confusing. So for obviously NASA, and then the Forest Service, but then the Forest Service handed these trees out to the seedlings once they'd grown them to various state governments. So in other words, there was no real connection. And so there was no real systematic record keeping. In other words, they sort of went to the state. Maybe the Forest Service knew that it sent, 3 trees to Montana, but what happened to them after that? If the state didn't keep track of them, the records are gone. And that's what happened for most of them. So somewhere in the communications, records just sort of got lost, or the trail got lost.
Okay, so that does fill in some pieces for me, because I thought it was a science mission. I was thinking, was there thoughts about, like, would the germination be different if, now that the seeds have been to space, or would the trees look different? Do they look different now that they're mature? I mean, what do we know about them?
well, okay, so it wasn't completely. I mean, they did take that into account. They did try. Actually, there's some funny stories about that too. But they did try to grow. They saved some seeds behind to try to grow control trees to see if there was any difference. No one expected there to be a difference, and that's why it really wasn't a science experiment, because it would have been amazing if these tree seeds had gone into space for a week, basically, and come back and been changed. And there were, with the astronaut the whole time. I mean, so what would that have said if there was that much effect from radiation or zero gravity or something on these little seeds, and there's an astronaut sitting in the exact same environment? So
yeah,
so they kind of knew, right? They kind of knew that space wasn't going to, make an astronaut start glowing or grow tentacles, and so they didn't expect anything to happen to the trees.
Yeah, the trees aren't like sparkling or anything like that. No. Yeah,
you can't tell them. You really can't tell them apart. There's no way.
That is very encouraging. I mean, again, it would make one wonder about our humans in space, if that would be the difference. But it is also fascinating to hear that it was a bit of a, you've got this, no, you've got this, no, you've got it, you figure it out kind of a situation with the trees. And that, people were just kind of like, it's nice, but we're not going to track it. That's kind of funny. I never would have expected that.
I know. Well, okay, so there's the other part of that too is, the Apollo program actually ended pretty abruptly. I mean, 14, there was 15, 16, 17, and then they were like, okay, we can't afford it anymore. They had plans for more Apollo missions. So, once it ended, I mean, it's kind of like everyone left the party and went their own ways, and, they lost track of a lot of stuff. In fact, part of my job is I'm still looking for some, bits and pieces of Apollo data that either documentation or, various things that weren't quite saved as well as they should have been. So there is that too. Anyway, they did lose track. Yeah.
So how did you find out about the moon trees in general? Because I think I've heard some versions of the story. I'm not sure if it's correct, but it involves a Girl Scout. Do I have this right? You tell me about this. My kid's a Girl Scout, so I'm just like, I'm dying to know.
Oh yeah, no. This is one of the things. If you told me when I started working at NASA that I'd be, this story, I'd be like, what? No, that's not right. Anyway, no. So in 1996, I got an email. Now I told you I'm archiving and restoring data from the old missions, and so my name was on a lot of pages for the Apollo mission. So I got an email in 1996 from this third grade teacher in Kennelton, Indiana, named Joan Goebel, and she said their class is doing this project on sort of local historic trees. And there was a Girl Scout in the class who said there's a tree at their Girl Scout camp, and it has a sign on it, and it says it's a moon tree. And Joan said, I don't know anything else about this except someone said it has something to do with the Apollo mission. So I'm like, okay, I never heard of moon trees. But okay, let me see what I can find out. I asked around. I mean, in 1996, I'm at Goddard Space Flight Center. There's an awful lot of folks around there, especially at that time, who were it's kind of the old timers who actually knew about the Apollo, were involved in the Apollo program. So I started asking around. I said, "Oh, we're at these moon trees on Apollo." And I got the best looks. They're like, yeah, sure, Dave. Thanks. I don't know what you're talking about. I never heard of these moon trees. I couldn't find anything. No one knew anything about them. I got online on the web. Now, in 1996, of course, the web was a little
very rudimentary web. Yes, I remember it well. Yes. Yep.
You could find some things, and I found a little bit about it. And then I also contacted the NASA History Office, and they sent me they had a little file there with a couple news clippings on the moon trees. So I had enough to kind of piece it together. And I figured, and I found out, okay, so it was Stuart Roosa. It was on Apollo 14. He brought these tree seeds. They brought them back. And I got enough of the story. I could answer Joan as much as I could. And then I was like, okay, I've done that. I've answered that email. And I thought, but this is such a cool story and no one knows about it. I mean, like I said, people I talked to, even who were around at Apollo, didn't know about this. So I'm like, well, I hate this to get lost. I have these web pages about the Apollo missions. I said, I'm going to stuff it in there. It doesn't belong to the science archiving, but we have some latitude to do, public outreach, that sort of thing. So I made up some pages. About the moon trees and what little I knew. I should say pages, probably one page. I fit everything I knew on one page. And I had about 6 trees, I think, at that point, that from the various news clippings and what I found online. So I put the list of these 6 trees on there, and I put a note at the bottom. I said, hey, if you know about a moon tree, here's my email. Please let me know about it. And I started getting emails. Oh, we've got a tree in our local park. It has this plaque. I never knew what this was. It says it's a moon tree, and it was planted in the bicentennial in 1976. And I started getting all these messages. People would send me pictures. People would, some people sent stories about they remembered the moon tree being planted or, things like that. Newspaper clippings. So it started coming together. And then I started hearing from some people, stumbled across it from the Forest Service. And then I started from people who actually worked on it. And I got from them. And then I actually heard, now Stuart Roosa had passed away in 1994, so just before this. But I actually started getting emails from his family.
Oh, wow.
And then that was amazing. I remember the first one I got from his son, Jack, and he said, oh, this is, I just took my daughters to see the moon tree, and he said, this is very special to me. You see, I'm Stuart Roosa's son. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. A connection to his father. Oh, that's really sweet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, right. So anyway, I got a lot of the background from, the Forest Service people, Stan Krugman and these guys, and I got stuff from Stuart Roosa's family, and the story really started coming together. And now I've it's 100 and something trees there that people have sent me information and pictures about, and it's been kind of amazing. It just kind of blew up.
We'll be right back after this quick break.
The IT world used to be simpler. You only had to secure and manage environments that you controlled. Then came new technologies and new ways to work. Now, employees, apps, and networks are everywhere. This means poor visibility, security gaps, and added risk. That's why Cloudflare created the first-ever connectivity cloud. Visit cloudflare.com to protect your business everywhere you do business.
So it's just sort of been like on simmer. I mean, you've got your job that you're doing at NASA, and this is sort of like a little side pet project, which I love. I love this so much. Before we were chatting, I was looking at the list and I was trying to figure out if there's one near me, because in my head, I'm going, I'm pretty sure I've seen something like a plaque saying moon tree, but where would I have seen that? And I only see one in Massachusetts right now. That's where I'm at. But I'm just like, it's not far from me. I should go check it out, see how it's doing. Now I'm really curious.
Yeah, the Holliston police station one, which is was another. I mean, and there's so many funny stories related to these things too that I hear. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I have my job, right? They do encourage us at NASA to do public outreach, educational outreach, whatever. And so I am allowed, not.
Oh yeah, no, and I wasn't trying to say that at all.
Sort of encouraged to do this, so I know that.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah,
I'm just saying,
I love that.
I do have not enough of my time. I could really spend almost full time on this sometimes, I feel like.
I was going to say, quick back of the napkin math, a lot of them are still status unknown. Like so if there was 500 seeds, assuming all 500 germinated, only, or did I do that math right? Or maybe I'm misunderstanding. So how?
No. Well, there's more of the story. And I know you're somewhat limited in your time, but when they first came back, the 500 seeds, when they first came back, NASA tried to plant, they planted about half of them. Well, what happened was actually, even before that, when they came back, they tried to decontaminate them. They decontaminated everything that came off Apollo. Now, Apollo 14 was actually the last one they did that for. And then they said, you know what, there's nothing on the moon we have to worry about. But the seeds got thrown into a decontamination chamber. And part of it was they put them under a vacuum. Well, the seeds were in these little plastic bags. And for some reason, they had opened up the canister before they put it in there. So the bags all burst. So the seeds flew all over the chamber.
Oh, my God.
Right. And these were explosively exposed to a vacuum. So no one knew what was going to happen. I mean, who would do that? No one's done experiments with tree seeds that I know of to just, explosively expose them to a vacuum. I mean, but no one knew if they would survive.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah,
that's right. So no one knew if they survived, but Stan Krugman went and said, just sweep them up and give them to me. Now these seeds, 500 in this they're teeny things. He went through all of them and sorted them. He sorted out the redwoods. He sorted out the Douglas fir seeds. And then they germinated. They tried to germinate a whole bunch of them to make sure they were okay. Well, they did grow, but unfortunately at NASA, they really didn't have the facilities to keep them alive. So after about a year, they died. So about half, roughly half. I mean, I don't know how many. No one, I haven't been able to find it, but a lot of them died. And they said, and the Forest Service and NASA said, hey, NASA said, we can't do this. And the Forest Service give them to us. So they sent the rest of the seeds to the Forest Service. And then the Forest Service germinated and grew them. So there's some good records, like, for example, for the redwoods, there's really good records. And I haven't been able to find records for some of the other ones. So I don't know exactly how many, but there's at least, I would guess at least a few hundred got sent out to the various states and stuff. They were trying to send out at least 3 to every state or almost every state. They want to grow in some places, but.
So I was going to say, the list is very impressive. I imagine there's still some number that are out there that you're looking for. Do you have any sense of how many you still need to find?
No, I have no sense at all because, well, okay, they're dying now. I mean, they're 50 years old, and so they are dying. I have no idea how many sort of died at a young age, and then a lot of the trees, if they're not marked, I don't think they could ever be found. I mean, maybe someone, every once in a while, someone sends me like an old news clipping or, something that indicates that there might be a tree somewhere. But I think there may be a few more to be found. I hope so, but I think there's going to be a lot that are out there that we're never going to know about because they've died. They were never marked or whatever. Yeah.
Well, in case. Yeah, it's a little sad, but at the same time, the fact that you've been able to catalog the ones that you've been able to find, that I think is really remarkable. And especially now that I'm thinking about Artemis, have you had any input on how folks are tracking the new generation of moon trees, by the way? I mean, because hopefully they won't do the same thing all over again.
Right. Not directly. I've talked about it. I think they are. Keep it very systematic records. So I think they learned, from this experience and all. So I'm pretty sure that's cool. I'm not directly involved with that. I've been, I've talked to them on and off over time, but I'm not because this is plenty for me.
I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah,
no, I get that. I was just thinking if there's anyone to speak to about the Apollo moon trees, you are the guy. So I mean, that's. I love this. I I will make sure that in our podcast show notes that we have the website. So if somebody knows something about a moon tree that maybe you don't know about, we'll help get the word out.
This happens. No, this happens, if there's an article in a magazine or a newspaper or there's some sort of interview somewhere. I will get a little spike sometimes in, people's, just getting information and stuff. So yeah, that's definitely
really
could help.
Oh, well, Dave, is there anything else you wanted to share with our audience today? I know I've taken up a ton of your time, but I've loved learning about this. So thank you so much.
Oh, geez, don't know. I always love talking about the moon trees. When I first put up the webpage, and I put up my 6 trees, and I started hearing from people, and I said, oh, here's another tree, and here's another tree, and I started adding to it. I was probably up for maybe 6 months or so, and I got a call from someone at Goddard, and they said, why don't you have the Goddard moon tree on your page? and I said, there's a Goddard moon tree? So not the world's greatest detective. So I sure enough, there is a tree at the visitor center, a moon tree, first generation moon tree that was planted at Goddard, and it does have a little sign. Now, it is off to the side. It is not along a path. There's no way to get to it unless you kind of walk across the grass. So if you noticed it, and obviously at least someone did noticed it and walked across to see what it said. There's a sign and it said the moon tree and it was planted and it went on the Apollo 14. And but that was too funny. I'm like, okay, great. I'm the world's foremost expert on moon trees, except for the one that's
literally in your backyard. Well, I'm glad that I can verify. Indeed, it is there. I see it on the list. That's great. Well, you never know. There might be one that someone has been walking by and they go, oh, moon tree, who knows what that means? And now they'll know that someone's looking for it.
I'm always hoping. And I have a few, if you look on the list too, that are sort of status unknown, because I've gotten either a newspaper clipping or information from some archive. An intern at the New York State Archives a couple of years ago just got interested in this and found a whole bunch of stuff at the archives and sent it to me. A bunch of, it was great. I mean, he just sort of decided, he'd do this, as part of his internship or something. And he found a bunch of the details. So there were supposedly 4 trees sent to New York State, but I can't find evidence of any of them. But there's all these letters about it. They were, the seedlings were shipped there and they had these plans to plant them here and there and the other thing. And then that's it. I can't find another thing, which is, not atypical of what happens with these things.
Yeah.
The trail just goes cold.
Huh. Well, maybe some of our New Yorker listeners can, if they know anything. Yeah, I'm like, all of them are status unknown. That's interesting. Well, one of them's in Buffalo.
Go to Buffalo.
I have a friend in Buffalo. I will ask. I'll be like, hey, you're around. Can you go check it out? You never know. If I find out anything, I will definitely let you know, because I have a friend in Buffalo. So I will ask.
Okay. Yep. Now I heard not too long ago, someone sent me a clipping about one in Maryland. And so I went to see, and I couldn't find any sycamores where it was supposed to be. It was supposedly a sycamore was planted there. Couldn't find any sycamores there. But I did get in touch with someone, and I'm hoping to maybe get a little more information about that. So yeah, it's still ongoing stuff.
That's fascinating. All right. Well, I hope we can help a little bit, but no matter what, Dave, this is one of my favorite stories that I've ever heard while doing this job. Honestly, as also an avid gardener, this is just everything for me. I love this story, and I love that you are working on tracking these down. I think this is just wonderful. And especially now as I'm thinking of Artemis and the next generation of moon trees. I hope we won't make it so difficult for folks in the future to keep track of it. But it is the journey,
isn't it?
It's
much fun, though, right?
Right? Exactly. It is the journey. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for telling me about the Apollo moon trees. I really appreciate it. That's it for T-Minus Deep Space, brought to you by N2K Cyberwire. We'd love to know what you think of this podcast. You can email us at space@n2k.com or submit the survey in the show notes. Your feedback ensures we deliver the information that keeps you a step ahead in the rapidly changing space industry. T-Minus Deep Space is produced by Alice Caruth. Our associate producer is Liz Stokes. We are mixed by Elliot Peltzman and Trey Hester, with original music by Elliot Peltzman. Our executive producer is Jennifer Iben. Our executive editor is Brandon Karp. Simone Petrella is our president, Peter Kilpie is our publisher, and I'm your host, Maria Varmazes. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.